Donald Trump.
ਜਦੋਂ ਕੱਟਿਆ ਜਾਏਗਾ ਵੋਟਾਂ ਦੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਦਾ ਜਾਲ, ਕੌਣ ਬਣੇਗਾ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦਾ ਰਾਸ਼ਟਰਪਤੀ?
He's always been a dummy.
Everybody knows he's a liar.
ਵੇਖੋ ਪੀਟੀ ਸਮੇਂ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਸ਼ਾਮ 7:30 ਵਜੇ ਤੋਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀਕਲਾ ਟਾਈਮ ਟੀਵੀ ਨਾਰਥ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਤੇ। ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ 2020।
Have a good time.
Good evening, Tracy and San Joaquin County residents. I'm your host, Rod Singh, along with Gurteja 12 with our new show with new candidate running for San Joaquin County Supervisor position for District 5. Gurteja, please welcome our candidate and introduce her to our audience, please.
Thank you, Rod. So we are here today with our candidate, Rhodesia Ransom. So everybody knows her. So she is currently working as in city council for City of Tracy, who was a former planning commissioner, and she runs a non-profit organization where she helps the kids in all aspects and works a lot for our community in the City of Tracy and across San Joaquin County. Now I'll request Rhodesia Ransom to please share some more about her.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. Everything you said is true. I am a Tracy City Council member, a former member of our Tracy Planning Commission. I served there for 7 years, and I'm a nonprofit executive director for an organization that provides mentoring and mental health, which is a very needed service for young people in San Joaquin County. I'm also the mother of three kids actually, who graduated from Tracy high schools in San Joaquin County, and I'm also a wife. So that's a little bit about me. And as was mentioned, I'm a candidate for the San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors, which is a super important position overseeing services and resources for the residents in San Joaquin County. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Rhodesia. We appreciate your time and energy too to give it to this platform and share your thoughts and vision with all the audience that would be listening to you today and watching your videos later on as well. So that being said, I want to jump into our first question topic for today's discussion, and that would be to start off with COVID-19, as it's a global pandemic and it's impacting everybody internationally, locally, nationally, everywhere. So I think everybody would be interested to know, as you are as an elected official currently and running for a county supervisor's position, what's your vision and how you are planning? First of all, what are the challenges you are hearing from the residents, and how are you planning on addressing them and proposing to create some solutions around that?
Okay, so I'll start by saying that COVID-19 is like the ultimate test of government. It's the ultimate test of governance. Our jobs, number one, are to make sure that we can keep our community residents safe when we're making decisions, and that we can protect the health and the wealth of the community. And COVID-19 is a threat to the health and the wealth of our community. So very early on, when this pandemic, started coming towards California, I personally also was having meetings with our city manager about what we needed to do, how we could prepare, and nobody could have actually prepared for this. So it was really everything being done in that moment to not only show leadership, but to really make sure that you were able to pivot and have good responses for the things that were happening. So on the very first night that our city council had to declare that we wanted to do a shelter in place, it was actually kind of a recommendation. It wasn't the mandatory, but that was the recommendation. That night was the first night I said, what are we going to do for small businesses? Because it doesn't take a genius to even understand that when you're going to have shelter in place and businesses are going to be impacted. We have a ton of small businesses here locally, not just in the city of Tracy, but also throughout our county. And so was it really important that we are able to start thinking ahead. What can we do for them? What can we do for our residents? So we did what we could to defer, payments for utilities and things like that, because we knew those residents may not have access to money if they can't go to work. So that's a really small part of just trying to be sensitive and be human beings to help other people. But then there's a bigger picture of that, and that is, how do you keep the community safe? We have a small local hospital here in Tracy, and that hospital was not doing COVID testing. So I personally went within my personal network to call and to get the testing center that we have. And I said, can you do me a favor for, I don't know, 30 days, 60 days? And they said, let us look into it. That testing center is still here because in order to stop COVID, we have to know where it's at. And we need to be able to make sure that people are not unknowingly passing this virus around our community, because COVID needs a body, it needs a host. So those are some things that we've done. Here today, you'll see what came out is that it's now mandatory, in the state legislators put out that it's now mandatory for companies to tell their employees if another employee had COVID. They were not doing that. We were getting all kind of calls and really trying to work with businesses because, the businesses were trying to make quick adjustments. I raised PPE, personal protection equipment, for the local hospital that ran out. And it really was a collaboration, right? So when I say I raised it, I got together with some other businesses and some other electeds. We helped raise, the protection equipment. And so now, as we look at COVID, we don't know how long it's going to be here. We also have to plan for recovery. This may be an ongoing thing. So what are we going to do to protect businesses in the future? So we need to make sure that we're using, there's federal CARES Act dollars that were given to the community, to the city and the county. And now we need to make sure we're allocating that in a way that will be available when businesses need it, and also making sure that we're that voice when certain businesses need help, like our hair salons. Hair salons have a lot of training, a lot of requirements, but they were the last ones to be able to open. So, just putting those calls into our governor's office and making sure we're in communications with our public health directors to do what's going to be necessary on a dime, like just very fast, make changes to protect the health and wealth of people who live in our county and as well as our cities. I think you're on mute, Raj. It says mute.
It happens every time with me. I apologize for that. So sorry. Yes, thank you for highlighting on that topic, Rudisha. It is very imperative, and you touched the great points that it's impacting the small businesses, and that's the backbone of any city. And we need to make sure that we're engaging and taking care of them. And that being said, I on the previous episode with the person running for assembly seat, Kathy Miller, I had the same question asked her, and I'm probably going to go over the same question with you too. Some folks, they are not unable to pay the rent, and they're barely making their sales, and they can't even pay the employees. Is that something is being done by the county, or are there any resources available to a city as well, City of Tracy?
Yeah, so there's actually not enough resources, right? Like I said, nobody said, in March of 2020, we have a pandemic that we're planning for. We weren't prepared for that. And that really exposed us that we need to be better prepared. So there's a lot of deferments for rent and mortgage, and a lot of, people who are renting properties, they have renter protections through the state. But that also impacts the landlords, the people who actually own the properties, because now it's a business, right? So now they're not getting money to protect their business. So I know that San Joaquin County actually has, as part of their program, so they, with the CARES Act funding, part of it was they put aside money for a grant program. So you can actually apply for funding for different, business relief. It's not going to be enough. Let's just be real. It's not going to be enough, but the landlords, because it is a business, they can apply for that relief. And then if you're a tenant, you have other protections that the state of California has already put in place. So the city of Tracy, we actually did do some funding. We did 2 different types of grants using CDBG funds, as well as one type of fund that would help small business owners. So there's 2 different ways to access it. The problem being there's just not enough. And then with CDBG, which is the Community Development Block Grant Funds, there's some restrictions based on income that some of our business owners were not able to overcome because they might have made too much money. So we really have to find more ways to support small businesses and people who are being impacted with their rental and mortgage payments as well.
Thank you, Rudija, for highlighting on that. And now I would like to Gritesh to keep us moving to the next part of our discussion. So Gritesh, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Rudija, for touching the COVID aspect, because every citizen is facing it. And as a lawmaker, so you mentioned, so what currently the situation is and how in future this will be dealt. As in future, so the condition, the fiscal wise, it will deteriorate, so we have the plans. But that said, so we have the affordability as well as the jobs that are not in abundance in these cities like Tracy, Mountain House. Majority of the population, they have to drive across Altamont Pass. So I was reading from the Central Valley, more than 100,000 people on everyday basis, they have to go outside of these cities to find the job opportunities. The other reason for that is for the affordability aspect of a housing. Approximately 110,000 should be the income yearly of a household to afford a house. In public sector, in these areas, less than 50,000 is the income, and in private sectors, less than 70,000. So there is a huge gap for the affordability as well as the job opportunities. So what do you think where we are currently and where you want to see this district in future?
So there's a lot of things you just touched on in that one small question. The fact that so many people travel from the Central Valley to the Bay Area for jobs is indicative of a very big issue, which is the jobs housing balance. We do not have balance with housing and jobs. The Bay Area used to have balance, but now they have more jobs and they don't have enough land. And so now people are coming here for housing because there's not enough land to continue building housing that people need. But as a result, what's happening is we don't have a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the amenities that a lot of these companies are looking for, and we're also missing an educated workforce. So a big part of being able to really plan a community to be sustainable, to plan a growing county, because this particular area, you have to realize, used to be mostly agricultural, mostly farms, and industry. And so now we have a bunch of people who moved here because it's affordable, but they still have to commute. And that commute is only going to get worse because we're the only place left to build homes in this area. And so as we are looking to grow our community, it's important that we put some requirements in place, that we work with our local cities. I'm part of the San Joaquin Partnership, which is it's my position on the city council. It's a committee that I'm assigned to. And part of what we do is we actually have an executive director who works with the Bay Area companies, and we bring them out here and we show them the different areas where they can actually locate their companies. And it's time for us to make some deals with some of those places, because part of the reason they're not coming here is because we're missing some things. We're lacking some things. Infrastructure is a huge thing. So as we build housing, infrastructure is mandatory. Like, you cannot build housing. It's a kind of a misperception. People think you're building housing and you don't have infrastructure. Well, that's not true, because you cannot build housing without building infrastructure. But we can definitely do a better job of working with the Bay Area companies and those technology companies and the places that some of our people are commuting from right here in San Joaquin County to go to in the Bay Area. And people are going, well, we already have people who commute there. Why won't the companies move here? Well, we have an issue with education. We've done studies, and we know that only 25% of our residents have the education that they need. So what those companies are essentially telling us is that in the long run, we don't have a sustainable workforce for them. And part of that is because of, it's all interconnected, housing affordability. So personally, I have 3 kids who graduated here locally, and my kids are in college. One's finishing up his last class, one's a junior at her university, and one's a freshman in college. They're going to have all this education, but they're not going to be able to live here in San Joaquin County, and definitely not in this community, which means we're going to perpetuate that problem. So the only way we can do that is by making sure that we are putting affordable housing into our community so that we can make sure that those kids, and as well as those seniors, have a place to live. Tracy just actually authorized, our council did, we had a 4-1 vote to authorize what's called a transit-oriented development that included our first real step towards a commitment to making sure that we have housing affordability. It's a 10% inclusionary housing. You've never seen anything like that in Quincy, but it's a good way, if the voters approve it, for us to say we are committed to starting to build affordable housing, workforce housing, that people can actually afford to come here with their education and live in our city. And so those are some things that we have to do. We have to keep our educated young people here. We have to put the infrastructure in and work with those companies and be able to make sure that we are building a community that's not just a place where people come and sleep, because that also impacts our economy. When you work in the place that you live, your dollar turns over. It turns over because you're here locally, so you're going to spend it at the restaurant. Then, you know, the local restaurant person's going to go spend it when they do their business. We need that money in our economy, and we have to fix our housing and jobs balance in order to fix that.
Thank you very much for acknowledging this. And as you have suggested, that there are works being done with the companies that are across the Altamont Pass to encourage them to come here. So one thing you mentioned, there is a lack of infrastructure, and with the housing, yes, infrastructure will come. And the other point you touched, that the workforce has to be encouraged and it has to be developed. So from the aspect of the city is improving, infrastructure is building, so but it will take some time. So it will take a couple of years. During that duration, the citizens, they have to commute. So from the commute perspective, like we have 205, we have 580, and we have ACE trains. So all these things are becoming jam-packed. So what do you think where we are from the transportation perspective until we have the job opportunities here? So what would be the future look like?
So what I hear you saying is, what can we do while we wait for those companies to come in the infrastructure? So we got to do more than one thing at a time. There's currently this push that we are all supporting in order to bring the Valley Link train here. And so that is going to connect people from the ACE to BART type of thing, which will actually help with the South Bay as well as with the the South Bay is already connected through ACE, but the East Bay can be connected through Valley Link. So we need to do as many of those opportunities as we can to get people on alternate forms of transportation to connect them to the Bay Area. But keep in mind that that's not the only solution, because we're building houses faster than we're going to be able to build one single solution. Housing is continuing. So I don't want to kid you. But what I will say is that what we can do right now, the pandemic has given us an opportunity for us to be able to show that people can work from home and be successful. And so hopefully we can work with some of them to put some satellite places here in our community. And really, we have to do more than one thing at a time to make it possible.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so the internet, these connectivities, so maybe they will be part of, like, we are using water, electricity. So yeah, those are the options, innovative options that you are thinking about. So thank you very much for touching those. As the commute time that is increases on day-by-day basis. So there are talks about the train, the Valley Link, that will be separate from the ACE train. So ACE train now connects to San Jose. So this Valley Link that will connect to our BART station that is in Dublin. So that will help our Tracy as well as our Mountain House commuters a lot. So thank you very much. You are very good proponent of the transportation aspect. So I think we have lost her. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a technical issue.
Right.
We'll just wait a couple seconds to a minute.
Can you hear me?
She's back.
Can you guys hear me? Hello.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So
you're still on mute, Rhodesia.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you for a second, Gertage. I'm sorry. You were asking me something. I couldn't hear anything you said.
Hear you. Can you please refresh your browser once?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption. So, Raj, can you please summarize what we have discussed so far? So
I think she's back, yes. DJ, can you say something? Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Just saying thank you very much for touching the aspect from the commuter perspective. As transportation, that is a gradual process. We cannot do it overnight. So you have a vision for the Valley Link, Ace train connects us to San Jose, so this Valley Link will connect our Tracy Mountain House and other commuters to the BART station.
Yes, we have to, like I was saying before, we have to do more than one thing at a time because we are continuing to develop real estate here, right? Because we're the only place that can do it. And it's not even about one particular city. Tracy is building houses, Mountain House is building houses, Lathrop is building houses. So even if one city says we're going to stop building, you're not going to be able to stop the traffic that's going to come from the cities that are continuing to develop. And we did not get in this, situation overnight. So we have to be focused on doing more than one thing at a time. So that is trying to get people to be able to work locally, making sure that we can connect people who must transfer to the Bay Area to jobs, getting them there in a way, that it's not so such a drain on their lives. They spend a lot of time on the freeway.
But thank you very much.
And a follow-up part on that, Rhodesia, couple things we have talked about, right? The COVID is teaching us a lot in a different manners, right? So one of the things that's happening right now in the corporation sector, especially in the IT sector, people are working. They get to work from home now. So what is it doing? It's creating such a huge load on the internet issue, connectivity issue, and again, as we are talking about education side, so if kids are being they're they're having classes online, and they're on the computers as well. But overall, if you look at in our city, we don't have very much internet providers. And if you're talking about the innovation and technology right now, and being right next to the Bay Area, which is the IT hub, what about some of the points about fiber optical cables or putting them in? So we have, because like you said, everything's interconnected. So putting the infrastructure, plug and play kind of situation would be only done if we have a very invested, up to speed internet and all this infrastructure in place. So what are your thoughts and vision on that?
So that's one of the things when I said when we're talking to other companies and finding out what do they need to come here, those are some of the things that they need. If you have a high-tech business, you're not going to locate in a place that doesn't have high-tech connection because you're not going to be able to do your core business the way that you do other places. So a lot of the places that are currently in construction, Prologis and Tracy, River Islands over in Lathrop, as they're building their new infrastructure facilities, they are actually putting this in so that people can actually access it. But I really think that countywide there needs to be a bigger focus on it. I know Stockton has made some strides. There was there was some talk about it in Tracy a couple of years back, but really we have to make a concerted effort to countywide be able to look at our infrastructure issues. One of the reasons you don't see it at the level that you should is that we don't really have great tax sharing agreements. There's not a ton of money for infrastructure in local cities. So really, we either need the county to give us the money that we need through these tax sharing agreements, or we're going to need the county to work with our state, and we're going to need them to actually fund some of this. A lot of what happens at the County Board of Supervisors comes through pass-through. So it's going to be about working with our federal legislators, our congressmen, as well as with our state legislators as well, to find out what are the opportunities to get this region up to speed when it comes to the technology that we need. It's the same way that we fund highways. Now we need to fund technology highways. And so I've had some conversations with our leaders at the state and federal level about really bringing this county up to the standard of what we need in order to be able to meet the challenge of actually creating local jobs. And it's not about just placing a building here. It's about understanding that, there's a lot of things that go into running a business. And it also includes education. So that's part of it.
Thank you, Rhodesia, for highlighting on that part. So follow up something you already touched, but I want to get a little bit more specific about it, education sector. We talked about home affordability and jobs, that there are people living here, they're making this their hometown, and they go to work over the Altamont Pass. And along with that, you brought a really great point where you said that there's no sustainable workforce. that's related to why we're trying to look into creating the sustainable workforce by having a university or the school of the educational institution. And I believe about not too long ago, maybe a month ago, there was an article published by, I believe, Record from Stockton, that there are some challenges opening up the CSU in the Stockton area as well.
Right.
But my question is overall, we have Mountain House, Tracy, combine this, the way the population is increasing, why are we not having those sort of a conversation to open something in our area?
So those conversations are actually happening. It was really disappointing to get the report back, the study that said, hey, we can't sustain a CSU Stockton. And I know I do not represent Stockton, but if we can get a campus that close, then we can actually pull for a satellite campus. As soon as Assemblymember Eggman was already working with, the governor and trying to push for that, I reached out to her. I connected her with some local landowners. There are people in this community that are willing to put satellite, campuses here. And it is definitely important for us to have public education that is accessible for our young students as they are graduating, so that there's not such a huge stretch between where they're going to college and the community that they grew up in. When you look at industries like the medical industry, as example, we have a general hospital, the San Joaquin County General Hospital here. We can have, schools that have nursing and schools that have, I don't want to say we're going to have a medical school here, but, you can definitely have some of the education to fill the local hospitals. That definitely adds to our income. Some of the technology education, those things all would help build this community. And so everything that's worth having is not always easy. They got told no for now, but I think that we can build a really strong coalition and that we have a really strong argument with all the continued growth that is happening here. I know that Assemblymember Eggman is not letting up on that dream of making that happen. I know we've tried so hard to work with some other small private colleges, but it's really not the same, because a lot of the times the private colleges may be a little more out of reach, and the young people end up with a lot more student debt than they want. So the push for something local as far as a public education is a huge game changer when we're talking about being able to have an educated workforce that will be able to attract jobs.
And Rhodesia, at the end, if anybody have a follow-up question, they wanted to contact you for anything to clarify, where would you like them to contact you? Can you share your information?
Absolutely. I can be reached, Rhodesia Ransom. You have my name is spelled there. I have the Facebook page. I have two, Rhodesia Ransom for County Supervisor and Rhodesia Ransom. You can message me. You can email me at Rhodesia, first name, at ransomforsupervisor.org. And my number's on Google. So I take calls from constituents all the time. I return as many as I can because I really think it's important that we are accessible and accountable to people's questions. Even if we don't agree with them, we have to respond to them. So anybody who's looking for answers, or even if you want to participate in government or bring a suggestion, I'm here for that too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rhodesia.
ਬਦਲ ਚੁੱਕਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਵਕਤ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਦਲ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਨੇ ਐਂਟਰਟੇਨਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਸਾਧਨ ਵੀ। ਹੁਣ ਕੇਬਲ, ਸੈਟੇਲਾਈਟ ਜਾਂ IPTV ਬਾਕਸ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਨਹੀਂ। ਆਪਣਾ ਸਮਾਰਟਫੋਨ ਚੁੱਕੋ ਅਤੇ ਐਪ ਸਟੋਰ ਜਾਂ ਗੂਗਲ ਪਲੇ ਸਟੋਰ ਤੋਂ ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਡਾਊਨਲੋਡ ਕਰੋ ਈਬਾਬਾ ਐਂਟਰਟੇਨਮੈਂਟ ਐਪ। ਕਾਸਟ ਡੋਂਗਲ ਦੀ ਮਦਦ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਸੰਦੀਦਾ ਟੀਵੀ ਚੈਨਲ ਜਾਂ ਮੂਵੀਜ਼ ਆਪਣੇ ਟੀਵੀ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਅਤੇ ਡਰਾਈਵ ਕਰਦੇ ਵੇਲੇ ਬਲੂਟੁੱਥ ਨਾਲ ਰੇਡੀਓ ਵੀ ਸੁਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਈਬਾਬਾ ਐਂਟਰਟੇਨਮੈਂਟ ਐਪ ਐਂਡਰੋਇਡ ਟੀਵੀ ਅਤੇ ਸੈਟ ਟੌਪ ਬਾਕਸ ਬੌਕਸ ਗੂਗਲ ਪਲੇ ਸਟੋਰ ਤੇ ਉਪਲਬਧ ਹਨ। ਸੋ ਜਲਦੀ ਤੋਂ ਜਲਦੀ ਖੁਦ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਐਪ ਡਾਊਨਲੋਡ ਕਰੋ ਅਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਫਰੈਂਡਸ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰੋ। ਈਬਾਬਾ ਐਂਟਰਟੇਨਮੈਂਟ ਐਪ।
ਪੰਜਾਬੀਆਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲਾਂ ਦਾ ਇੱਕੋ ਇੱਕ ਹੱਲ ਭੁੱਲਿਓ ਨਾ, ਨਵੰਬਰ 3 ਨੂੰ ਜੈਨੀਫਰ ਵੱਲ।
ਨਿਊਯਾਰਕ 'ਚ ਵਸਦੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਮਸਲਿਆਂ ਤੇ ਮੁੱਦਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੇਗੀ ਇੱਕ ਬੁਲੰਦ ਆਵਾਜ਼, ਜੈਨੀਫਰ ਰਾਜਕੁਮਾਰ।
And most of all, I am a proud Punjabi American.
ਜੈਨੀਫਰ ਰਾਜਕੁਮਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੀਆਂ ਚੋਣਾਂ 'ਚ ਵੋਟ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਕਰੀਏ। ਅਰਲੀ VOTING ਲਈ 1 ਨਵੰਬਰ ਤੱਕ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੈਨੀਫਰ ਰਾਜਕੁਮਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਸਕਰੀਨ ਤੇ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਗਈਆਂ ਲੋਕੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਅਤੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਅਨੁਸਾਰ ਪਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਵੋਟ ਅਤੇ 3 ਨਵੰਬਰ ਨੂੰ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਦਿਨ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਰੈਗੂਲਰ VOTING ਆਪਣੇ ਨੇੜਲੇ ਸਕੂਲ 'ਚ ਜਾ ਕੇ। ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਭਵਿੱਖ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਹੱਥ। ਜੈਨੀਫਰ ਰਾਜਕੁਮਾਰ, we can do better.
Vote Jennifer, support Jennifer.